Welcome to YOUCANIC. In this video we're going to go over the steps on how to replace the alternator on a Mercedes that has the 3.0 diesel engine. This is also the OM642 engine, that's the code for it. It's found in many Mercedes models. So here we have a R class. This is a R320, but the R350 diesels also have the same engine, same alternator. This engine and setup is also found on the GLs, on the MLs, on the E classes. Of course they have the 320 or the 350 diesel engine. It's also still the same engine. It's also found on the Sprinter. So the procedure is very similar on all of those. The main difference is going to be the hoses that you have up here in front and the space that you have here. And so we have already disconnected what we need to get this job done and have replaced that. So we're going to go over the steps and just explain everything in detail, because as far as recording, the alternator is all the way back down here and it's just nearly impossible to get the camera down there. But let's go over the steps. So what we had to do is on this side right here, we have this hose right here that connects, and that needs to disconnect. So you see that? That needs to disconnect. And what? You have the same thing over here, and all that these have is a clip on the other end. Alright, so that connects here, but you have this clip right here. So what you do is with a screwdriver, you're gonna move this up, slide this up to here, okay, and you'll have it like so. And then you just simply pull the other end out. You pull the other end. Now this piece also needs to come off, because we do need to take off the serpentine belt. So this piece, what it had two bolts, one here, and you can see the bolts for that. So there's a bottom bolt there and this top one, and you will need a set of E or Torx, female Torx set. So this is a E12 for these two bolts here. And then once you take the two bolts, this is located right here, okay. So once you take the bolt, the upper one and the lower bolt off, then you have this piece right here that goes like that, and it's held with a Torx screw right there. You take off the screw, then you pull this out, and then you pull this piece down, and that's it. You could leave this down here, just make sure you don't start the engine with that piece down there. The next thing is getting off the serpentine belt. You can see the tensioner right down there. So the tensioner is right here, and in order to get that to move this way so that we can slide off the serpentine belt, so you need a 17mm socket. You place it right there, and then you push that down. It's going to require a little bit of force, of course, and then as you push that down, you slide off the serpentine belt. And pay attention to how that serpentine belt is routed, because what will happen is when you put it back, you might forget exactly how it goes. So that's important. Pay attention to that. So you slide that off, and then you can slide it off over here. Now the next step is, here we're getting close to taking off the alternator. So we need to make sure that we disconnect the battery, and location of the battery is going to vary between models, but on these R-Class GLs and MLs, even though the battery is under the passenger seat, there's a really quick, easy way to disconnect it. So let's take a look at that. So if you come here on the passenger side, you look under the seat, you can see the negative terminal. It connects to the battery and then it grounds to the frame right there. It's got a 13mm nut. Once you take that nut off, you can disconnect the battery, and that's it. Very simple. So right down here we can see the alternator in it, and it's not a lot of space there, but you can still get to those bolts. You have two bolts on top, and they do require E12. You can also get them loose with a 10mm wrench as well. This really helps a lot. It's a ratcheting, and it can bend as well. This really speeds up, it makes it a lot easier. You can come here and get those bolts loose, the top one and the one on the other side. This is ground wired from the alternator to the frame. You gotta make sure that you keep that, reconnect that when you put everything back together. There's one piece that we did have to take off right here. This is 10mm bolt. We just unplugged that and move that out of the way, because then we move the alternator up. But take these two bolts off, and I'll show those to you on the alternator where they go. So you have these two bolts that come right there, one there, one there. So they go like that. And these require Torx E12, or you can also, like I said, you could also use a 10mm wrench. And then you have two on the bottom as well. These bottom ones, you can access them from the top, but it's a lot harder. So it's easier to access these two from the bottom. And once you get that, then you can tip the alternator a little bit. You can see right here, this is the positive, and that's why it's so important to disconnect the battery, because this positive connects directly to the battery even if the ignition is off. That's always live. And take off this cap, has a black cap on top. You pop that off and then take off this 13mm nut that goes right here. Disconnect that cable. Again, make sure battery is disconnected. Here's the electrical connector. You press the connector and pull this off, and then we're able to remove this through here. It is pretty tight, so you kind of have to move this around and move some of these hoses out of the way. It is possible to get it down from the bottom. We just didn't want to bend any of the transmission cooling lines or anything like that, so prefer to take it off here to the top. And of course it might be slightly different on maybe it's on an ML, might be a little bit different. This is the R class, so you have to kind of judge and see which way is better, whether it's better to take it down or come up here. But in this case we took it off from the top. You want to reinstall it, and when you reinstall it, because this alternator will just kind of be down, you have to hold it up and then put the bolts. It's really helpful to have somebody hold the alternator from the bottom, hold it up, line it up. One little tip is get a long screw. This is actually the screw that's for the other piece. Take a long screw, put it through, and put it to line up at least one bolt, because trying to line up the bolts and then try to thread that first one, it's really difficult. Take a bolt like this, putting it up, it's like really easy. Then have somebody just hold it up, and while they do that, while this bolt is on the other hole, start threading one, thread the second one, then pull this out, and then thread the other two and tighten them. Before you do put these bolts on though, make sure that you connect the positive. This you can put it right away, or you might just leave this after you put the bolts. You can always plug this back on, that's not an issue. But yeah, so put the bolts in, connect that, and then put the serpentine belt back on, and any hoses that you disconnected, anything that you removed, make sure you put that back together. And it is a little bit challenging. I would say it's about average as far as the job. It will take 2 to 3 hours. It is good to have the right tools. This really helped a lot. We also use this small ratcheting wrench. It's not necessary, but it does speed it up a little bit. That's it. We'll have a step-by-step guides below, any additional information that you might need. So make sure to look at those, and also if you got any questions, make sure to leave a comment in the guide section. Thank you for watching.